Hi, welcome back. So the next few videos are going to be focused on font and text manipulation. So we're going to be working with actually changing how this text looks. The first thing I want to talk about is there's actually two parts to this section: text manipulation and font manipulation. And although they sound like the same thing, they're actually very different. So the first part in this video, we're going to be covering text manipulation. Now there's not that much to look at, but pretty much the difference between the two is that text manipulation is looking at things that you can change no matter the font. So for example, something like sizing would not apply because the size is going to be based obviously on the font itself. So basically things like underlining or capitalization are going to be completely regardless of the font. You can change them no matter what they do. But things like bolding and things like size, bolding, things like that, they are completely dependent on the font, because again, the font decides how the font itself is going to look. So it decides the size, the bolding, and just the overall style. So the first part in this video, we're going to be covering text manipulation, and in the next few videos, we're going to be looking at actual font manipulation. So things like external fonts, which is probably the most exciting part of this course, and things like weight and bolding. All right, let's get started. So the first two things I want to cover are text decoration and text transform. So these are properties that are going to be relating to the style of the text. Now I know I just said that fonts and mostly styling is dependent on the font, but in this case, these properties don't actually rely on the font at all. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is text decoration. So although it sounds like you can do a bunch of cool things with this, the only real thing that you can do is change the lining of the text. So we're going to go ahead and work with this anchor tag here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a class. Oh, there's already a class there actually. We can just go ahead and select it. So I'm going to go dot link like that. And now what I can actually do is change the lining of this right here. So by default, anchor tags have a text decoration of underline, but there's actually three more properties that we can use. So the property to use it is called text-decoration. It's pretty obvious. Now the first one I'm going to look at is none. So this completely removes the line from our links. They're completely gone. You don't have them anymore. The next one, which is the one by default, is underline, like that. So that's our normal link. Then you have line through, which is line dash through. And it's pretty obvious what that does. It just puts a line straight through. And then of course there's the overline, which is the line on the top. So there we go. Now we have a line on the top. Now, although you won't see the two that we just showed, line through and overline, very commonly, it is very common to see underline and text decoration none applied, because sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen this in websites all over the place, you can hover over links and they maybe change color. Again, we'll be learning how to do that in this course, but you know, they might change color and do all sorts of things, but you usually don't see them with an underline. So that's where this property comes into play. So I'm just going to change this back to underline just to make things a little interesting. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and cover the next property, which in this case is text transform. So you can see that we have a bunch of text here. And let's say maybe we're working as a freelancer and our client wants us to capitalize all of our text. How are we going to do that? Now, obviously, we're not going to go through and capitalize every single individual word. That's going to basically be suicide. Although it is possible, it could take a lot of time. So the easiest way to do it is using the text transform property. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this on the whole body for now. The property to do this is text-transform. It's pretty easy to memorize or learn these because they don't really require any weird memorization tactics. So now what you can do is go ahead and add our value. So there are three different values that you can use for this: uppercase, lowercase, and capitalize. So because we want to capitalize everything, we can go ahead and type capitalize. Now if we refresh the page, you can see every single word is capitalized without us having to actually change the text. You can also go ahead and use the other two, which are lowercase and uppercase. And that will obviously put everything in uppercase for you. But now you're starting to see a little bit about why these are text manipulation and not font manipulation. Again, it doesn't matter what font you're using, whether you're using some weird symbol font or Times New Roman, you can always use these to capitalize it no matter what the font is. On top of that, you can also move around these lines. It's not dependent on the font at all. So that's just a little bit about our text manipulation properties. So the next feature I want to cover is text align. So this is a little bit different from the other two that we've covered because it's not really focused on the styling or decoration of our text. Instead, it's going to be focused on the justification or alignment of it. So if you've ever used any text editor, for example, Microsoft Word or Google Docs, anything like that, you'll know that you can justify your text and align it to your site. So there are 4 main ones that are included in CSS: left, right, center, and justify. So I'm going to breeze through the first 3 ones because it's quite easy to use, but then the last one I'm going to talk about a little bit in more detail. So in order to achieve this, you can go ahead and add the text align property. And here I'm just going to go center as an example, and you can see that now everything is aligned. So the list items are a little bit weird. They don't actually move the decoration to the center when you align it to the center, but other than that, all of the text is now aligned to the center. So now let's talk about justify. Now we're not going to go through left and right because we already know that, but what justify actually does, I'm just going to show you here, is pretty much it takes all of the text and it kind of matches it so it's all fit in the same width, if it makes sense. So although it might not fit everything in the same length, what happens is all of this text is now stretched out as far as possible. So although you might not be able to see a direct difference, let's just look at this paragraph here. I'm going to just end off this property without changing it. You can see that without the justify alignment, all of these are different. So what the justify actually does is it sets all of the lines to the same length. So I'm going to go ahead and add that justify back. So you can see this used a lot in research papers and academic papers, essays, things like that. This justification is used a lot, and although it's not really used very commonly, it's still a very good feature if you have big bodies of text, if you're trying to make everything look very streamlined. All right, there we go. So those are the 3 different types of text manipulation properties that you can use, and along with their respective values. So I encourage you to go ahead and try this out on your own. You can do a lot of things with these 3 values alone. You can really change how the page looks. All right, let's move on.